partnership, we will increase the number of Wi-Fi Hong Kong hotspots to 34,000 by 2019. Apart from government facilities, we also encourage different organizations to install Wi-Fi Hong Kong hotspots at facilities such as bus stops, shopping centers, to provide free Wi-Fi service to our public. And to support e-learning, the Hong Kong government will provide subsidies for youth service centers and study rooms run by non-profit making organizations to provide free Wi-Fi service, thereby facilitating students to continue their studies after school using internet resources. The Hong Kong government has always encouraged the elderly and underprivileged groups to use information and communication technology. Since 2012, we have been providing funding support for NGOs to develop digital inclusion mobile apps suitable for the senior citizens and underprivileged groups so as to bring convenience to their daily life and help them integrate better into an increasingly digital society. And since 2013, we have conducted ICT outreach programs for the senior citizens to improve their access, knowledge, skills, and receptiveness on the use of ICT. So the Hong Kong government will launch the $64 million Innovation and Technology Fund for Better Living next month in May 2017 to provide funding support for projects that make use of innovation and technology to improve the daily life of Hong Kong people and address the needs of underprivileged groups. And we will also continue to upgrade our government forms, which are commonly used by the public to support electronic submissions in order to provide more convenient e-government services to the public. And to allow our citizens to browse government information and use e-government services more conveniently and quickly, we have revamped the Gov Hong Kong one-stop portal with fresh look to make it visually more appealing and easier to use. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope in the past minutes I have given you a general update on how the bilateral relations between Hong Kong and ASEAN has been flourishing in the last few years, and the efforts that we are trying to promote ICT in Hong Kong. And I look forward to the enlightening remarks by the two ministers. And I also look forward to the discussion later on in this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Indeed, we can see how important Hong Kong is in the scheme of things, especially given that ASEAN already has a free trade agreement with China, and yet the important link to China is something that we still have to actually formalize through a free trade agreement with Hong Kong. And I'd like to also note how Hong Kong is showing the rest of us the way. I remember our chairman, Dr. Tan Sri Michael Yeo, mentioning this morning how important that is we keep pace, in fact, as far as the digital economy is concerned as a region. Indeed, one observation I made in my recent research was that the ASEAN lags behind the other parts of the world in terms of e-commerce use. The proportion of total retail sales accounted for by e-commerce is still much lower in ASEAN than it is in, for example, in the Americas and in Europe. And therefore, we have a long way to go, and we do have a lot of work to do to make sure that this is a more digitally enabled regional economy. Well, I'd like to call now on our next speaker, of course, His Excellency Pon Sorasak, who is the Minister of Commerce of Cambodia, to share with us the Cambodian perspective on this effort towards a more regionalized economy through the digital economy.
Well, good morning. I would like to extend my greetings to Excellency Mustafa, Minister of Trade of Malaysia, and other excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. This forum provides good opportunities for ASEAN to hold discussions on ASEAN economic communities and digital economies. Currently, the world is facing many challenges, both in new economic and geopolitical order, such as the uncertainty of Federal Reserve banks in raising the base interest rate, the Brexit, and the future of EU, the risk of Chinese economic slowdown, and the slower growth of emerging economies along the rising of geopolitical tension. Against this backdrop, ASEAN has continued its strong growth, which has been regarded as a safe region and made significant contributions to global economic growth. However, there are some roadblocks standing behind ASEAN and advanced digital economy in society, such as financial services and e-commerce, low consumer awareness, no single digital market, etc. So, policymakers should consider some measures, namely pursue a broadband revolution, accelerated innovations in mobile financial services, e-commerce and connected cities, enhance trust securities in ASEAN digital economy. Well, by 2025, digital revolution could transform digital daily life in ASEAN with a large and youthful populations increasingly equipped with smartphones. ASEAN has an opportunity to pioneer the development of new digital services, especially advanced mobile financial services and e-commerce. These sectors are likely to give rise to digital champions that will lead the way for broader economy. The digital economy could possibly be embraced as central to the AEC to make integration bigger, better, and happen sooner. The digital economy can be a powerful, positive force for regional integrations. It is for that reason that ASEAN could consider prioritizes the digital economy. For Cambodia, we have many advantages in implementing ASEAN vision due to the fact that our country is strategically located in the center of the region, and it is the most open economy in the region, and it is endowed with the high growth potential supported by demographic dividends and rich natural resources. Cambodia has placed its strong belief in building of ASEAN economic community through integrations and connectivity by exerting our utmost efforts to rehabilitating and developing many infrastructure over the last 2 decades. In this regard, Cambodia is well prepared to cooperate with other ASEAN member states as well as with other countries in the region as in the rest of the world to further strengthen ASEAN economic communities to be more resilient, especially in the context of the fourth industrial revolution in digital economy. As regard to e-commerce in Cambodia, it has remained hampered by unfamiliar and fearful consumers and a lack of secure processing options. In order to cope with this situation, the Cambodian law on e-commerce has been drafted and has now been reviewed and waiting for review by the Council of Ministers before forwarding to the National Assembly and the Senate for adoption. Under the new law, Cambodian business will be able to legitimately conduct e-commerce internationally, creating vast new potential for international market expansion for Cambodia-based importer and exporter. On the financial inclusions in Cambodia, It has evolved dramatically in the past few years, driven primarily by the success of microfinance. The National Bank of Cambodia has been one of the most creative and supportive in approach to financial inclusion. Nowadays, digital finance has expanded rapidly in Cambodia with the open regulatory space for mobile money and the prioritizations of leading financial market leaders. I would like the forum to consider: 1, identify the digital economy as a core of AEC. Second, analysis and identify the law and regulations that needs to change and look possible to harmonize in the region. Third, support the development and the deployment of solutions with the best available security and privacy.
Starting, it's about to start. It may still be too early to assess the impact on the economy of Mindanao and both areas. But the studies of JICA and USAID, RAID Foundation, has pointed out to
All the desired attributes for the region as a whole: dynamic networked, innovative, highly integrated, and competitive, and could meet all the priority pillars of ASEAN integrations. Now let me talk a bit about what I've been yesterday or the day before in Geneva. That was what we call e-commerce week in Geneva this week. Cambodia was part of this e-trade for all readiness countries. It has been chosen as one of the countries that is willing to make an assessment of what we have as far as the readiness of e-commerce. We see a lot of issues that challenges the poorer country like Cambodia. Among all is the infrastructure for ICT that can support the e-commerce. Second is the financial issues, financial support to kickstart, if you will, the starters, the startups of e-commerce. They need support. They need capital startups to start their entrepreneurships. Cambodia was the coordinator of LDCs this year also in LDCs, mean least developing countries, member of WTOs. There's two schools of thoughts in there. Of course, we are embarking on the bandwagon of e-commerce, all of us things. But the second school of thought is talking that poorer countries are not ready for it. Why? Because of lack of infrastructure. They're afraid that the gap between the poor and rich countries will widen even more. Starting since the digital divide, when the ICT or internet was in inceptions several decades ago. As the coordinator of LDCs in members of WTOs, Cambodia has a responsibility to talk to them, to talk to the LDCs members, the rest of them, especially from Africa, who said that we don't want to do it, but we want to see how you can help us. First of all, on the physical infrastructure, especially on the ICT infrastructure, so that we can work with you on the e-commerce activities. We feel that ready is not a word. When you're ready, you have to be there. You have to be involved in order to work on this digital economies. If you're not working, that means you are slowing down or you are going backward. We also try to provide more support and fundings to the LDCs or poorer countries to strengthen their infrastructure, especially on the internet penetrations, on the telecommunications, on the interconnectivities between countries to countries. The intention of e-commerce, the intention of working with e-commerce is inclusiveness. You cannot just move along with what we have, but we need to think about poorer countries who are in dire need of physical infrastructure for a start. In this, that's why the awareness has to be created as a whole, for the whole wide world, in order to make this e-commerce or e-commerce activity or transactions being as inclusive as possible. So with this, I would like to sort of generate more questions than answer for you, and then I'll be glad to talk more after the Q&A, during the Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Minister Pan Sorasak, especially for highlighting the importance of having the basics, which is, of course, the infrastructure, which many of us in the ASEAN still indeed have a lot of work to do on. We in the Philippines, by the way, complain of having the slowest internet in the region. And to a large extent, this is also because of the economic institutions, mainly the lack of competition in the telecommunications sector that has led to this perceived slowness in progress in upgrading our own capabilities in ICT. Now, of course, we would next hear from a country that I see to be much more advanced in the region in terms of addressing these infrastructure needs, as well as the human element of that as well. So let me call now on His Excellency, Dato Sri Mustafa Mohammed, to speak about the Malaysian perspective, as well as the regional perspective in this topic that we have before us today, the digital economy and the ASEAN Economic Community. Minister?
Thank you, Dr. Habito, our moderator, my distinguished colleagues, Minister Pan Sorasak and Mr. Yong, Tan Sri Michael Yeo, distinguished participants. This is a very important year, the 50th year of ASEAN. We have to do something big. We have to create waves. We have to come up with something very impactful. And we're pleased to be here in Manila, chairman of ASEAN 2017. And as we know, the Philippines has put in place a number of priorities. And one of these is the need to do more, the need to do more for micro, medium, and small enterprises. As you know, for the Philippines 2017, the theme is inclusive innovation-led growth, 3 strategic measures, increasing trade investment, integrating MSMEs in the digital economy, and developing an innovation-driven economy. And I must say that the Philippines has been the main driving force for all of us. Minister Pan Sorasak, myself, and my colleagues, we're very grateful to the Philippines for pushing very aggressively this agenda of MSMEs. But before I go into the subject matter, let me say a few things about the big picture. Firstly, as I said, this is the 50th year. We have to do big things. We have to ensure that ASEAN continues to gather momentum towards being a cohesive, resilient regional grouping. And in Kuala Lumpur, 2015, we declared ASEAN as a community. In 2015, we want to transform ASEAN to become an even more cohesive economy by leveraging on innovation, connectivity, and the digital economy. So the digital economy, this phrase, is all over the place. Yeah? And this was mentioned many times, including in Malaysia when we chaired ASEAN in 2015. The reality is, firstly, ASEAN has got very good growth prospects, growth averaging 5% in the last decade or so. A lot more intra-ASEAN trade, now accounting for 25% of trade. There's a lot more trade among ourselves, a lot more intra-ASEAN investments. There are Malaysian companies investing in this country. There are companies from the Philippines investing in Malaysia. All these things have been made possible because of closer ASEAN economic integration. So the big picture is, this is a very dynamic region, growing very fast, a young population, growing middle class. These are all very familiar to us. And we are here in Manila in the 50th year, and want to do something very impactful. And that something is MSMEs and the digital economy. So once again, let me commend the Philippines for taking this initiative. In Malaysia, we have embarked on this journey about more than 25 years ago. We started what we call the Multimedia Super Corridor Initiative. We had 10 bills of guarantees, tax-free income tax incentives for 10 years, yeah? Free movement of skilled people, yeah? Lots of grants being granted by the government, and we set up a dedicated institution called the Multimedia Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation. It's called MDEC, yeah? Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation. And this is very important. To drive the digital economy, it's important to have some focus. And in our case, we set up this institution more than 25 years ago. Its job is to ensure that ICT is being adopted across all sectors, in education, healthcare. We've been talking about inclusiveness. We spend a lot of money to improve internet access in the rural areas, getting school children, yeah? E-learning is being adopted in a rapid way. So these are some initiatives which we have done, and results are there. Banking, there's a lot of online banking. There's a lot of e-government. We are one of the leading governments in the world practicing e-government. Income taxes are all paid, yeah? Online, for example. So these are some initiatives. I do not want to go into detail, but my point is, we have set up a dedicated institution, provided funding, including grants, and what's important is inclusiveness. We do not want just the urban areas, the privileged class, to enjoy internet access. Therefore, providing internet access to rural areas, broadband, continues to be an issue. Yeah? Dr. Habito spoke about the Philippines, internet access. We have similar issues. We have done better, but there are some challenges. Schools in the rural areas, it is our policy to promote e-learning, but then the issues, we've done some wireless and all those kind of things. Many solutions have been put in place. So this is very important for ASEAN, and we have a blueprint in ASEAN for the digital economy. So those are some things we've been doing in Malaysia. Back to Miss micro, small, and medium enterprises. We're here to talk about pushing the envelope. Yeah, we want to do more in ASEAN to promote the objectives of a more integrated ASEAN, the ASEAN economic community. Firstly, I think it's important to align public policies to the digital economy. Yeah, it's very important. And there's normally a lag between public policy and what businesses want. What Miss want are not fully reflected in government policy. So it's important to make sure that public officials respond very fast, not just responsive, but they got to be aggressive. They got to be ahead of the curve. It's very important to put policies, ensure that public policies, are conducive to the achievement of the digital economy. In Malaysia, we have, as I said, set up the Malaysian Digital Economic Corporation, more than 25 years old. We also set up the National E-Commerce Council, which I chair. Before this, it's all over the place. People involved in trade, investments, and there's no coordination. So what we've done, is to coordinate all these initiatives. The National E-Commerce Council will ramp up measures to educate our SMEs, yeah? Will help get the multinationals in the country involved in the training process. Awareness, yeah, to rural areas. We've been conducting lots of training programs, especially for the micro, small, and medium enterprise. So the setting up of the National SME Council has been instrumental in providing focus. But that's infrastructure. The other was, of course, the hard infrastructure, the broadband access, and the soft infrastructure, training in schools. Yeah? We have to teach our children about e-commerce. Universities need to align the curriculum to ensure that e-commerce is understood by every child or every student in a university. So it's important to get the mindset. It's important to get the mindset of Malaysians aligned to this new digital reality. So those are some things we've been doing. And a month ago, we launched what we call the Digital Free Trade Zone. We believe this is the first one outside China. Yeah? Jack Ma is going to invest in Malaysia. In the next couple of weeks, my Prime Minister is visiting Hangzhou, where Jack Ma comes from, to provide more content into this. The objective, this is a free trade zone, digital free trade zone. It's a virtual, and there's also a physical element to that. Yeah? But the biggest challenge, I think, is how to get the SMEs to be part of this value chain. Yes, you're going to create this platform. You have Alibaba, you have Lazada, and you have Alipay in China. We have similar payment systems in many parts of the world, many parts of ASEAN. But how do you get the SMEs to respond, yeah, to respond to all these new opportunities? That's the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is to enhance capacity building, how to train them, how to make sure that the prices are competitive, how to make sure that the products they produce are of high quality, how to make sure that they can compete with the world. So that's the biggest challenge. You can put, all kinds of policies in place, all kinds of measures in place, but unless you address the grassroots issues will be the micro enterprises. They are in a very remote part of the country. They do not have broadband access. Yeah? They do not understand the global value chain. So for us in Malaysia, that's a big challenge. And we've put in place a number of programs for capacity building, yeah? To make sure that we have enough. Yes, it's good to have Alibaba. It's good to have the platform, good to provide the broadband access. But it is important to change the mindset of the population to make sure that ICT adoption among yeah, micro, small enterprises is pervasive. So that's a challenge for us in Malaysia, ensuring that we have a sufficient number of SMEs which are able to compete on a global scale, which can supply the volume. Yeah, when you are on the global marketplace, the orders will be very substantial. And if your SMEs are not able to meet those orders, it will be a big embarrassment. So these are some basic challenges we're facing on the ground. And at the ASEAN level, of course, it's important to, yeah, Minister Pan Surasak spoke about trade facilitation, Dr. Habito as well. This is very important. Yeah? We're working in ASEAN on this issue of trade facilitation. We have various committees dealing with this. It is important for us to step up, making sure that at the border, goods flow seamlessly with end-to-end solutions, yeah? From A to Z, from beginning to end. This is important. Trade facilitation is a very important issue, custom procedures, and this is something that we have to work harder at. Making sure that custom procedures are uniform, yeah, across ASEAN, self-certification, we've been talking a lot about that. I just want to emphasize this fact, that in order to ensure the success of the digital economy, in order to ensure that micro, small enterprises are part of the global value chain, it is important for us in ASEAN to put our act together to ensure that there's more progress in this area of trade facilitation, making sure that obstacles at the border, custom procedures, and we have some way to go. And let us make this 50th anniversary of ASEAN a year in which we come up with some bold solutions to ramp up the development of micro, small enterprises, to ensure that digital economy adoption is speeded up, and to make sure that we make more progress. ASEAN as a group make more progress in the area of trade facilitation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I will stay on my seat this time. And first, before we open it up to the general audience, I would like to ask a couple of questions of our distinguished panelists. There was mention, of course, of the importance of making ICT accessible to all. Indeed, we heard about the Hong Kong efforts to make sure that senior citizens, all sectors of society, students, young people, and in fact, all sectors, in fact, have access through a wide infrastructure network that makes Wi-Fi available widely throughout the state. In Cambodia and in Malaysia and in the Philippines, I guess we have a long way to go in really expanding accessibility to all. So like while I said in the earlier part that we see ICT and e-commerce in particular as a possible equalizer in business between small and large business, it can in fact be an unequalizer if there is still that digital divide, that lack of access to precisely these facilities, these ICT facilities from the lower segments of society. But I'd like to also highlight one thing now. As our ministers and have already pointed out, we are all looking towards inclusiveness. And a very important tool for that precisely is ICT via e-commerce. As I understand it, one of the things that the ministers have been trying to work out within the ASEAN is a harmonized regulatory framework for e-commerce. Apparently, this is one of the obstacles in the way of more of an ASEAN-wide conversation on e-commerce, especially getting e-commerce to be more widely used by the consumers of the ASEAN, the 600+ million or so. And of course, the lack of a regulatory framework that is harmonized across the ASEAN adds to this lack of trust among our own consumers, from the smallest to the largest consumers, in actually using e-commerce as a platform. So I would like to ask either of our ministers where the conversation is right now in terms of the ASEAN meetings of the ministers themselves, moving towards this harmonized regulatory framework for e-commerce. Are we seeing something agreed on this in the foreseeable future? May I ask perhaps Minister Pan Surasak or Minister Mustafa? Are we moving towards a more harmonized framework for this one?
Yes. In fact, all of us now have a e-commerce law, or at least being drafted almost to the completions. Like Cambodia is probably the last country in ASEAN that will have the e-commerce law. That I call is a progress forward to have a harmonized law that allows you to work on a legal basis. Of course, e-commerce activities are already going on legally or illegally, and the law just try to, I don't call controlling it, I would say that make sure that the activities are fair, you have fair trade in there, and the law is based on the UNICITRAL law that is the common base for doing business in cyberspace. I see that as converging, and also Excellency Mustafa mentioned about the TFAs, the Trade Facilitation Agreements that has been already ratified by the WTOs for a few months ago, that allow people to, countries now to work on how to facilitate trade by looking systematically each country at a time, at least countries in the WTOs, so that they can harmonize and standardize their work. And if some countries who are still less behind on different issues like category B or C in the TFA, then we'll have funds, they have funds to support from different countries So this kind of initiative here, especially on the customs clearance, are going on. And Cambodia have been ratified their TFAs. They were the 69th countries in WTOs and also among the first LDCs to do so. So I see a lot of activities going on the legal frameworks, as you mentioned about, but on the social side and also on the financial side, I see that needs to be done more because of we need private sectors, we need PPP, participations, public-private participation. This kind of thing here, e-commerce needs to get everybody's involved. You mentioned about inclusiveness, and e-commerce is the catalyst to bring everybody together to do things for the better of the world. Inclusiveness includes young populations, gender also, and mentioned about the seniors, and that allows us to move things forward. I will just give an example that in the African countries, one African countries, they gave laptop to villages, students in a village, but they don't have electricity. But so this kind of impetus here push them to have electricity rather than before having a laptop, because they need laptop to charge. So you can see the I call ripple effects of things. They didn't have electricity for years and years, for decades. But as soon as you have laptops to work on something, they push their government or the private sectors to have a grid or electricity to come on board so that they can charge their laptop. I can see this kind of ripple effects that if you can start, and then you can move and push for other infrastructure to come. Thank you.
Minister.
In Malaysia, we have regular interactions between the various players in the whole ecosystem, e-commerce ecosystem. There are the payments providers, people who created platforms. And in these interactions, there's, of course, a gap, yeah? A gap between the capabilities of, I'm talking about SMEs, MISMEs, and what needs to be done in order to ensure that e-commerce becomes the dominant, marketplace. As we know now, in ASEAN, retail, as mentioned by Dr. Habito, is only 1% of total retail is through e-commerce. In the more developed economies, about 10%. So there's a big gap, 1% moving to 10%. Of course, there are many studies, depending which study you read, but the gap is so huge. So one is to have regular interaction to close the policy gap. We, public officials in general, are behind the curve when it comes to new things, and e-commerce is a new thing. So that's point number one. Point number two, it's important to get our own national policies in order. So before we move to the ASEAN level, we have to make sure that in Malaysia, Cambodia, in Thailand, the Philippines, we clean up, whatever, issue of duplication, gaps in broadband, for example, customs issues. So it's important to do that, firstly, which is to address issues at national level. Then we go to ASEAN. And ASEAN, we have the blueprint. In ASEAN, customs, I would say, is a very critical issue. This issue of de minimis, for example, what's the level? In some countries, is $100 US, some 50, because we have our national policies. So, I mean, you have different practices in different ASEAN countries. Yeah? In some countries, if it is $500 and below, you're not taxed, but in some of the countries, it's $50 and below. So these are areas where we have to work harder at. As I say, the biggest issue is customs. Yeah? Probably the strongest chain in this ecosystem is customs procedures. Yes, your question about where we are, we're working towards it, but in this 50th year of ASEAN, in the Philippines, where MISMIS is such a big agenda, I think it's very important for us to ramp up, to work harder. Otherwise, our SMEs are going to be left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I think you're right to point out that we do have to clean up our own houses first in terms of even the regulatory framework. And not all of us necessarily would have, in fact, the national regulatory framework completely in place to be able to talk regional on this matter. But I also like the fact that the role of ICT in trade facilitation has been highlighted among the speakers, because that's precisely where trade facilitation is going right now. We have an effort of a national single window and an ASEAN single window that will give us a one-stop portal or online portal for doing all of those trade clearances. And really, we have a long way to go in getting the ASEAN single window in place, and even much more, the national single windows in place. So really, there's a lot of work still to be done in that area. But still talking about e-commerce, when I look to Hong Kong, I see it perhaps as much more advanced in terms of the active use by its citizens of e-commerce. And I would like to validate that with Mr. Young. In fact, perhaps share some of your secrets also in making internet and e-commerce more widely available.
Thank you, Dr. Hapito. Yeah, e-commerce is very much in a way, it's relatively new, but a very exciting subject in Hong Kong, and on which I think we've been trying to do more and more, so that we are able to promote the wider use of ICT, including e-commerce. In fact, Hong Kong has a very good foundation in that sense. We have a very good infrastructure. For example, fiber optics, okay, are connected to virtually, most of the buildings in Hong Kong. So we've got a very good foundation for much better use of ICT, including e-commerce. And this good foundation, in a way, is accidental, because 20 years ago, we tried to open up our telecommunication market. We tried to open up the monopoly of our telecommunication market, and we tried to introduce more new players. And in so doing, we made it a point that we make sure that the fiber optic systems would be open for use by different service providers. So that has led to a very widespread use of ICT and e-commerce. So actually, that was one of the achievements that we managed to have in the past 20 years. So with this very strong foundation, then e-commerce and as part of ICT has been getting more and more popular. I mentioned in my remarks just a moment ago the government efforts to work more on digital inclusiveness, and this will provide good foundation for e-commerce. When it comes to regulation, we try to make sure the service providers will meet the legal and technical standards. Otherwise, we'll pretty leave it to the market. At a policy level, our chief executive chairs the Economic Development Commission, which is tasked with finding new areas for our economic development. And e-commerce is one of the subjects that this Economic Development Commission has been looking at as part of a new area for Hong Kong to venture into, to broaden the base for our economic development. But as I said, e-commerce is a pretty new subject in Hong Kong. We are trying to see, both at the corporate and consumer levels, how we can better promote the wider use of e-commerce. We're quite used to do online purchases. As a parent, Dr. Pito, in a way, I keep a close eye on how e-commerce is impacting on consumer habits, because my kids take my credit card to do online purchase from time to time. And it's not until when I see the monthly statement that I know how much they have spent. So at the consumer level, I think this is something that we have to look at, how online purchases can go in line with the general consumer habits. And you also mentioned single window. So at the government level, Dr. Pito, Hong Kong is also trying to develop a single window for trade facilitation, because at the present moment, those trade-related, documentation related, which is required by different government departments, is done either still by paper or by e-submission. So Hong Kong is now working hard to, set up a trade single window, which we hope to roll out, in phases starting next year. And hopefully, this trade single window will also be connected to the ASEAN-wide trade single window. And if that can be achieved, then the whole trade facilitation network will be much improved. So these are the areas, both at the government, corporate, and consumer levels, that we are now trying to promote when it comes to the development of e-commerce. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it turns out we have less time than I thought. I was looking at this, this guide over here and how much time was left. But I think we can take one quick intervention from the floor, just to make sure that there is some audience participation in this. Is there anybody who would like to actually ask a question of our speakers? Yes, please, just one. And please make it brief.
Thank you. This is very brief. I'd like to ask the honorable ministers of Cambodia and Malaysia how they address the barriers that women face in accessing the digital economy. I want concrete, specific steps that your governments are taking. Thank you.
Women's access. Yes, either of you, please.
What is the question?
How do you respectively address women's access to ICT and the digital economy? It's often seen to be somewhat
Just
disadvantaged.
very quickly, this is of course an issue everywhere, and this year in Manila, of course, women empowerment is a big thing as well. So I must congratulate you for that. In Malaysia, we have specific programs for women. We have a ministry responsible for women. I'm sure you have in the Philippines and Cambodia as well. It's happening in every country. I think the challenge is everything's good on paper. That's a challenge. Whether in Malaysia, Philippines, or Cambodia, the challenge is implementation. We all have very good policies, and that's where the challenge is. Why is it so difficult? Because you need good people, leadership, of course, and the mindset. But I would say the biggest challenge would be education. Everything is good on paper, implementation lacking everywhere. But education is important. Awareness, just to be brief, in my view, education and awareness, these are very important to get more women to be empowered in entrepreneurship and ICT adoption.
Thank you. Minister?
I thank you for asking this. Same thing in Malaysia, we have Ministry of Women's Affairs. I've been working as Ministry of Commerce, we've been working with Ministry of Women's Affairs all along. And we have an agenda, make sure that we first of all, put women in the workforce and also as officials in the government. We intend to put women at least 30% in the private sectors and try to help them in every private sectors, especially in the micro SMEs. We know that women is representing in the majority parts in the micro SMEs on the legal, outside of the frameworks, and also declare and non-declare side. Not just for e-commerce, we've been working with women on the handicrafts sectors, especially on the sales sectors that our women is working, and at the same time babysitting their babies at home, so women can weave and make materials out from silk while their husband is doing farming in a country outside of home. This kind of work here we've been looking at for the past decades, and we try to promote starting from the of course entrepreneurships, putting them in as a role of entrepreneurships, and try to work and put them with other groups, like creating associations and groupings so that they can have people to talk to, advisors, and so on. Our ministry is very much involved in that. As Mr. Mustafa mentioned about, is the implementation side of e-commerce or trade itself. I would like to mention that, you know, laws can be done, can be drafted, but the implementing of the laws is very, like any other laws, it's going to be very, very tough. I see many things that will happen during the implementations of this e-commerce law. And especially this law here has to be borderless. That means, you know, it's involved regions, it involves other countries also to work on this law. We are very keen on putting women first. I can go on and on because our society is based on, you know, women as the leaders of the countries. So this is very important for us. I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry to
Well, I'm
interrupt.
afraid our ministers have to leave already, so I'm afraid we won't have much any time for a wrap-up at all. So thank you very much, Minister Tan Sri Mustafa and Tan Sorasak and Mr. Young. Maybe just one quick souvenir photo.
Thank you, Dr. Cielto Habito. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to thank all distinguished speakers for a very insightful discussion and giving us an update of recent developments occurring in their own countries. We also like to thank His Excellency Dr. Sri Mustafa Mohamad for his remarks, and unfortunately he has to take his leave because of another appointment. We'd now like to commence our next session. Our next session features a very special CEO's Roundtable on business views in the ASEAN economic community. Now, I want to invite Mr. Jose Luis Yulo Jr., President of the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands and former Secretary General, ASEAN Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Tan Sri Dr. Lau Ban Tin, Director of BIG Industries Berhad, Mr. Ramon Garcia, Chief Executive Officer and President of DFNN Incorporated Philippines, Dr. Jessie Tang, Founder and CEO of East West One Group, and Mr. Lawrence Choi, Senior Vice President of Aladdin Group. We are honored to have Professor Dr. Federico Macaranas to be chairing this session. Professor Macaranas, who is chairman of the Economic Department at the Asian Institute of Management and the former Undersecretary, Department of Foreign Affairs, Philippines, will be chairing this session. Without further ado, may I now invite Professor Macaranas to deliver his introductory remarks and to moderate this session on how business view the AEC and how it can benefit from closer economic integration. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, ASEAN citizens. We hope that you're in the spirit of the people-to-people connection as our business leaders attempt to answer some of the concerns on how business can benefit from the closer economic integration and enhanced connectivity of this region. Over the past week, there have been several people asking what a leadership forum should be about. And it must be about not talking about the mundane little things of individual firms, but on the direction of industries and economies. Business has its own forum in the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, but the voices perhaps are limited to the voices of 3 representatives whose representativeness may in fact sometimes not be fully appreciated by people. That's why this kind of forum is very important, because we will get the sentiments of those who relate to more industries than perhaps 3 representatives could. Definitely, connectivity is an issue that involves more than digital economy. In the ASEAN Master Plan for Connectivity, there are 5 areas of connectivity. Sustainable infrastructure is one for the physical. Digital innovation is a second, which is the theme of our group. Seamless logistics is a third. Regulatory excellence is a fourth. And people mobility is the fifth. Indeed, when we talk of mobile financial services, networked supply chains, and cloud technologies, we only focus on the digital issues. But that is, in fact, much more than mere technology. Because in the current discussion of digital economies, we look at 8 issues, which our panelists hopefully will address in some way. One would be the technology issues like internet architecture and infrastructure, the Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence, which may impact, for example, on the business process outsourcing industry. Like it or not, many of our industries may disappear in 5 years because we have not paid attention to artificial intelligence. Then the second set of issues are security, cybersecurity, cybercrime, encryption, and spam. It is interesting to note that a digital free trade area or a free trade zone is being discussed. Maybe this is a point where closer government regulation might be in the horizon if indeed security breaches are more often practiced. Then there are digital rights issues on data as well, privacy and data protection, data flows, and data localization. Then there are development issues like capacity development, especially for the rural areas and the marginalized folks in the women's sector, and the technology transfer and digital divide that we so often hear about. There are legal issues, and these legal issues might be on privacy and data protection, data flows, and data localization. There are socio-cultural issues on cultural diversity, multilingualism, content policy. Then there are digital transaction issues like electronic payments, virtual currencies, digital signatures, and finally, e-commerce and trade issues, which encompass taxation, jobs, labor and employment, competition policy, convergence, e-procurement, and licensing. So you can see there's a whole world of the digital economy that gets also into digital society. And it is my pleasure to be introducing to you a group of experts in different fields who will be able to get to us some of those leadership thoughts about this role of the digital economy in the ASEAN economic community. Our first presenter and speaker would be Jose Luis Yulo Jr., President of the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands, the oldest business organization in the country. His experience in a vast list of industries, I think, will make you listen to his presentation with more fervor. But equally, our other presenters will share with you their interests in many fields. Tan Sri Dr. Lau Bantin is a chartered accountant and consulting economist, but he has his own social advocacies as well. And it is of interest to us that he is not only interested in education, but also in the financial aspect of the economic system. The third presenter will be Mr. Ramon Garcia, whose presidency of a stock market listed technology company will lead us to some of the IT solutions providers' view and a systems integrator view, because that is going to be part of the AEC in the longer term. He also has an interest in education. Dr. Jessie Tang is a very interesting lady with a medical degree, but now a full-fledged entrepreneur dealing in palm oil. And if it's of any interest to us, this palm oil industry has caught not only regional but global attention, especially since new technologies are being developed in the sector. Finally, Mr. Lawrence Choi Poong Kyong, a Malaysian, is the Aladdin Group president, who's had a vast experience in the advertising industry, and I think his perspective on his engagements in other ASEAN countries, especially Thailand, may be of interest to us in this discussion. I wish to call the attention of our presenters that there's a timer. There will be 10 minutes presentation so that we have enough time for an exchange of views. So may I call on Mr. Jose Luis Yulo.
Thank you very much, Dr. Macaranas. I'd like to briefly spend my time from 2 points of view. The first one is I got to talk to a lot of businesses through the years, and I'd like to express to you what their views are on the ASEAN economic community. Then from there, I'd like to inject a little bit of my thoughts on the AEC, and then we go into the relevance of connectivity. To begin with, when I ask many businessmen, what do you think of the ASEAN industrial complementation, of the ASEAN economic community, I get 4 responses. I want to see how you respond. First response is the word opportunity. Do you see opportunity in ASEAN? How many sees opportunity? We do. Okay. Then the next word that comes up is optimism. Do you feel optimism in ASEAN? The third word that comes up is confusion. Do you feel confusion in how to implement the ASEAN dream? You're afraid to raise your hands. How many are confused? The fourth response, which they do not say it out clearly, is fear. Fear of losing the competition game. Anybody of you feel fear? Nobody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are the honest people. Honestly, these are the 4 words that come out when they talk about ASEAN. Now, if we examine why, it is because many of our countries came from a colonial ruler. So in the back of their mind, they're saying, we want to develop ASEAN based on a co-prosperity manner, meaning we all grow together. Nobody is left behind. Nobody colonizes anybody else's economy. That is why it took 50 years for the long development of ASEAN, because they couldn't figure out how to do it. So they thought of AIJV, ASEAN Industrial Joint Venture. 2 ASEAN partners join together, you have duty-free access. Then they turn that around and call it AICO, ASEAN Industrial Cooperation Scheme. And then they came out with AFTA, the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. That was, I think, the main pusher for ASEAN integration. And then with the AFTA, they had to come up with a common effective preferential tariff. Wherein if your product lists in AFTA, then you only pay 5% or 0. But the beauty of that, for inclusiveness, they admitted non-ASEAN countries to own manufacturing firms and still enjoy duty-free entry. Do you all know that? It's a secret. Maybe the digital economy will make you bring that out. What is this? What is the CEPT, Common Effective Preferential Tariff, ASEAN Free Trade Agreement say? You only need a minimum of 2 ASEAN countries owning 40% of the value of a product. The 60% can be owned by non-ASEAN. It can be American, it can be British, it can be any country. So, meaning 60% of the product value can still be manufactured abroad as long as 40% is within ASEAN. Then that product can enter duty-free. Very few people understand this. No? So we have not reserved ASEAN purely for ASEAN people, but we have opened it up to the rest of the world. I hope the digital economy can explain this further. Now, when ASEAN began, it began with the idea of AIC, ASEAN Industrial Complementation. We were discussing at that time when we built a car, each of the 5 countries, the 5 regional founders of ASEAN would build a component of the car. Singapore, the engine, Philippines, the electricals, transmission to Thailand, everyone will have something. So everybody has technology transfer, employment, and a factory built up, then that car comes in duty-free. So it wasn't competition per se, it was complementation. That was the idea, because nobody wanted to be left behind. Somehow along the way, we went forward, and the AIC, Industrial Complementation, became Economic Community. Wonderful name. What does it mean? We followed the European Economic Community. Same name, Economic Community. What does it mean? One market, one production base, competition, inclusion, etc. But this is where the problem lies. When you say one production base, that's beautiful, if the factory is in your country. But if most of the factories are in Thailand, what is our benefit? You can't enter the one market. Doesn't mean anything to you. The point I'm driving at is as they experience in Europe, they notice that in a globalization concept of free competition and free trade, the word competition means losers and winners. What do you do with the losers? What do you do with Greece? What do you do with Spain? What do you do with Portugal? There's no really built-in mechanism to handle that. ASEAN, however, has an ASEAN dispute resolution concept. So we thought ahead of the Europeans on how to resolve these issues. And obviously, because we are conscious of the fact that we don't want one country to overshadow another, the progress is slow. So you have to understand this. But if you can come up with a business, a trade and transaction, manufacturing, that includes at least 2 ASEAN countries and a non-ASEAN, then it can move faster. Because everybody thinks we're fine, we're okay. So I think that should be the guiding principle behind our heads when we try to push forward our agenda. Now, if you just look at the internet, you will find all these words. CSAP, Consolidated Strategic Action Plan of ASEAN. ATIGA, ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement. ATR, ASEAN Trade Repository. ROO, Rules of Origin. This is very important. For you to get tariff-free imports, you must use Form D. Does anybody of you know Form D? You do, good. If you import from China and you don't pay tariff, you must use Form E. Then you can import duty-free, otherwise they tax you, okay? Then there is ASW, ASEAN Single Window. This is beautiful. A one-stop area for helping you and getting information. ASSIST, ASEAN Solutions for Investments, Services, and Trade. Another beautiful acronym. ACTS, ACTS, ASEAN Customs Transit System. So we can transit goods, and then re-export again. There is such a thing. STRACAP, Standards, Technical Regulations, Conformity, Assistance Procedures. Wow. AFAS, ASEAN Framework Agreement on Services. ATISA, ASEAN Trade and Services Agreement. AMRA, ASEAN Mutual Recognition Agreement, meaning our doctor here should be recognized in Malaysia as well, if you pass the exam. Competition policy and law, etc., etc. Now, without digital technology, all of these beautiful words that are done by our governments would be a secret. Because now it is already available, but very few people know it. So to my fellow businessman, please Google ASEAN and all the sub-agreements that have been talked about, so you will know better how you can be involved in ASEAN. Now, before I close, I'd like to say that ASEAN, because of ASEAN, for the last 50 years, our 10 countries never went to war, because we are still dreaming the ASEAN dream. The ASEAN dream is for all of us to have a better quality of life, no one left behind. That is a dream. It means we don't engage in winner take all. In business competition, you don't want to enter a country like a conqueror and say, I'm going to conquer the whole market. No, you enter and say, who are my competitors? Can I only take 10% of the market? Will I be happy with that? You don't think I'm going to conquer and kill everyone else. That is not ASEAN. That is the European way. That is the Western way. And it is bringing them problems. That's why you have the Trump phenomenon, you have Brexit, you have France, the elections in France now. Because they found out that there is something wrong intrinsically in globalism per se, as there is something wrong in protectionism per se, as there is something wrong in isolationism per se. So the world now is looking for a new ism. Maybe it is moderated globalism. Maybe we can call it ASEAnism. Because ASEAN is really trying to invent a new manner of becoming economically prosperous without overcoming anyone. That is the ASEAN dream. The other day, I had a visitor from Thailand. I'm closing soon. The Board of Investments of Thailand. All of you have your Board of Investments. So I asked them, I thought the Board of Investments is for investments into Japan. What are you doing in the Philippines? Oh, we are reversing the role of the Board of Investments. We are now dealing with investments of Thailand businesses outside of Thailand. But we want to do it within the ASEAN dream. Meaning, they were interviewing me to find out where should Thailand invest in? How should they handle local businesses? How do they come in without making the local people angry at them? That is the ASEAN way.
Thank you very
and
much.
already
Mr.
Thailand
Yulo.
is doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. I think we found out that the EU model has not been fully adopted in ASEAN. That's why we are going to have no Brexits version here. But the key word of ASEAnism as moderated globalism already has an equivalent in ASEAN. It's called open regionalism. When we say open regionalism, we embrace each other, but we do not exclude the rest of the world. So when Mr. Yulo says two ASEAN countries can partner, and they only have 40% of investment in an industry or firm, then the 60% can come from the rest of the world. And that is openness. And this kind of version of globalism, I think, is what we need for the current century. Because people are afraid protectionism might swamp the world, and we will be swept away with that. So with that, thank you very much, Mr. Yulo, for such a wonderful start of the dialogue. May I now call on Dr. Laubantin.
Thank you, Professor. I'm here and I'm very excited because I think ASEAN can look forward to many exciting years, which is coming soon. But I think we should have a look and a review of what happened to the world in the last 20 years. And things have changed so much, and why ASEAN is exciting. For the last 20 years, you'll notice that there is tremendous movement of economic activity towards Asian side. China became the world manufacturers. A lot of factories in US and Europe closed down and moved to China. And by year 2003, a lot of companies in Europe got nothing to do. They start playing with financial papers. So 2003, banks start collapsing, and then the government rescued the bank. By 2008, the government who rescued the bank, the government themselves collapsed. And what they do is they do QE, they print here, they print there, and think the whole credit crisis mess up the Western system. And Asia keep growing. But of course, while Asia keep growing, it comes to a time that we find that our customer become so poor because the system collapsed. And when they collapse, they start quarreling, and then you have Brexit and other problems. So AEC, Asian Economic Community, we are excited, but we also do not want to have the pitfall of European Union. So we are marching forward and marching slowly for 20 years. So we need to see what happened to whole Asia. China, India, and ASEAN, we are going to be the world manufacturer. And we have been doing very well. We have ASEAN 620 million hungry people, hardworking, producing goods and services, and wants to increase their living standards. So what we must do to realize our ASEAN community dream. So this world economic restructuring has been keeping us very worried. Besides the new president, I like his new hairstyle. The new president where he said that he squeezed some woman's backside, he became president. And the other man over the other side with a cute hairstyle, trying to press some button and throw some nuclear bomb. So while this moving on, we see China prosper thy neighbor. And ASEAN is going to cling on China, India, and plus ASEAN to be the new economic powerhouse. Well, the earlier speaker, even this morning, do not worry about China. If you recall back, when Mongolia conquered China, and today Mongolia is part of China, Manchuria conquered China and formed the Qing dynasty, Manchuria became part of China. Japan conquered China, luckily he didn't win. He had won, today Japan probably become part of China. So, what you can see, while China lost, suddenly found no customers, but the customers print money. Then the prosper thy neighbor. ASEAN, they are doing the gateway in Malacca, in Malaysia. You find that they invest a lot in Malaysia. They invest a lot in the country ended with tons. Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, they build a lot. So they like the tons countries, and that create a lot of infrastructure ready for the prosperity. So what businessmen in Malaysia, what we see, what should ASEAN do? Europe has only the uniform monetary policy. They have one currency, but they do not have the fiscal policy. So Greece will have negative budget. Germany has to be Santa Claus all the time until they break down. So for ASEAN to be successful, I am proposing that ASEAN community must harmonize the commercial law. You must harmonize Companies Act. Of course, we cannot ask every country to harmonize their tax law because the tax incentive, we all compete. And you look at the world, the FDI, all ASEAN, we are export country, export-led economy. So we compete for FDI. The FDI, the foreign investor, they got nowhere to go. They do not like to go to Latin America, war, diseases. They don't go to African continent, coup d'etat, war, and all kind of funny. They like to come to ASEAN. And ASEAN, we are ready. So we need to have a common Companies Act so that the intra-ASEAN business can improve. So investors from Singapore or from Malaysia, when they come to Philippines, or come to Indonesia, we do not understand what is your commercial law, what is your land law, what is your Companies Act. So that priority must be given to the harmonization of the commercial law. So ladies and gentlemen, on the aspect of digital disruption, yes, political leaders talk a different tone from businessmen. We businessmen have a very strange view about digital disruption. We scared our competitor suddenly adopted some funny ICT method and finished us off. And we do not know what they are going to do. So if you own, a good example, a taxi, suddenly Uber, Grab come in, and then your company collapse. And bear in mind, since 1997, economic disruption, not only digital, economic disruption got nothing to do with you. I'm an accountant. Arthur Anderson in Malaysia doing fine. Somebody in New York straight some paper, his office got to close in KL. You can work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Some clown plays some financial derivative. The banking system in Malaysia collapsed in 1997. It got nothing to do with you. So the 50 years that we move in the ASEAN community, slow and steady. We avoid the pitfall of Brexit, and I'm looking out, or I'm forecasting the next thing to collapse is Italy. And of course, Britain is smart to quickly run away, not to share the responsibility of distributing the workers, the movement of people within Europe. So ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, we are positioned for exciting year, where our captain is China, India, and the main ASEAN leaders here, where we are young population, which means that we are full of desire to work hard and to consume hard so that our living standard will come up. We avoid the pitfall of Europe, which I think what will happen to Europe and US, there will be a global hyperinflation. Meaning, US debt is 14 trillion, 100%. Malaysia, 55%. We are hammering our pollution left and right, only at 55%. In America, it's 100%, and yet they are all smiling. Each time they got problem, they on their printing machine and they print and they dilute all the money. And this has gone on also in Europe. So, Asian, ASEAN, we are hardworking people, we are thrifty people, we are obedient people, we are very friendly people, and I think we have all the exciting years to look forward as a community. So I am an ASEAN citizen. Thank you.
Now you have the spirit. Our business people are very much pro-ASEAN. And thanks to the first two presenters, we focus on what the role of the digital economy is. Number one, Mr. Yulo said, of the alphabet soup of ASEAN pronouncements, you will have a difficulty understanding even what the letters stand for. But now with the digital technology, any high school student can prepare a term project and really from the internet explain to the teacher what is this AFAS, ATIGA, etc., etc. And Dr. Lau Bintan has been very kind to suggest that indeed the digital view of businesses is quite different from governments because we realize, for example, that a financial crisis might be engendered by the use of financial technology from elsewhere that can collapse an ASEAN nation. And this is indeed part of the problem of the restructuring of global financial architecture, which I think ASEAN will have to stress because given that India and China and ASEAN will be at the core of the 21st Asia-Pacific century, we must be leading the discussion rather than being forced by dialogue partners to take their positions. Our third presenter, Mr. Ramon Gaezia, is more into the IT world, and we hope that he will shed light on most of the issues of interest to businesses, including small and medium enterprises.
Testing. Hi. Thank you, Dr. Poch and Tan Sri. That was quite interesting, especially the way you ended it with people. So good morning, everybody. I hope you'll indulge me, since I'm from the IT sector, that I take a more town hall approach to this discussion. We've got a timer here, so again, coming from this industry, I'll have to stick with what we call an elevator pitch I guess, to try to get across my thoughts. On this esteemed panel, I'm sure they'll introduce themselves, but I had a few minutes to meet with them. The aspect of people was very important from Tan Sri. I'm so excited to see palm oil expand in the Philippines, which is not yet so recognized as in Malaysia with Dr. Jesse. And I didn't know that 9 out of 10, people are non-Muslim who order halal food. So as you can see, there's already opportunity right on this very stage itself. But when it goes back to ASEAN unity, besides IT, from which I am from, and my company services banks, stock exchanges, financial institutions, even gaming companies, which to me is just another financial institution, it's a little bit funny coming from an industry that basically doesn't recognize any borders. The Philippines itself is well known throughout the world for having an industry that sends people nationwide, relocate, assimilate, and integrate. So ASEAN in itself really presents a very big opportunity. But sometimes when we get to these big words, especially the notes of my former boss in the stock exchange, Mr. Yulo, about the fear of all of these forms and so forth, it's really policy that divides us. Yes, colonials, but policy as well. But the difference is, there is a commonality which differs and separates us from the European Union. And sometimes we think about business, we think about the next smart invention, but we forget that we're people. And the funny thing about people, especially from the ASEAN region, is we are already uniquely intertwined. How is that? Well, let's just look at our language. On our language alone, you obviously have masuk, Philippines, pasok, pintu, pintu, cinta, sinta, the two most important. And I know my Malaysian friends love this. Minum, inum. So we know where that gets us. If you look at the front seat, you have a gentleman here, and I know he's going to get mad at me after this. His name is Mr. Frank Beltran. Beltran is a Filipino name. So his ancestors moved to Malaysia, but actually we're honored to have him here because long ago, before this president even became president, we were already integrated. He was a student in the Philippines, and he had a great roommate by the name of Rodrigo Duterte, who is now the president of the Philippines. So let's give him a round of applause for starting true ASEAN integration. So, you know, when we talk about integration, there's a lot of opportunity. Just let me tell you how it's already started. The CP Group of Thailand has now set up in our province here in Bataan. MAA Group, who I work with, which is a Malaysian firm, landed here almost 10 or 12 years ago and has now gone from the last-ranked general insurance company to the top 12. And the important thing is they look at ASEAN with opportunity as well. Is anybody from Bank Negara here? Good, so we can continue talking then. They're looking at how they can adapt in this market of what even just Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, what we call in the Philippines MAFIL, is a large market. And basically combined, we're bigger than Europe, all right, all combined. So they're looking at moving their back offices from Australia to the Philippines, and just depending on the policies based on, let's say, you know, risk-based capital, the type of paid-up requirement needed, but basically to attack the region from the Philippines. We're looking at software programmers in Vietnam to complement our programmers going abroad. We're looking at training people in Burma to be able to also join the Philippines in terms of knowledge transfer and moving people overseas. The MTR in Singapore would look at, let's say, countries that definitely need big infrastructure and leverage their advancements to help bring up the other countries that could perhaps benefit from them. The financial services, again, of Singapore would also be very critical in terms of when we talk about cross-border trading on stock exchanges. So the technology part is actually the easiest part. We have that already between us, between data centers in Singapore, the advanced research you have in Malaysia. It is already, by its very nature, transnational and borderless. What separates us is really policy. I won't even touch, let's say, a unified currency, but definitely these are what will hinder. These are the cons or the fears of ASEAN. Today, if you read the Singapore newspapers, you see already a backlash on certain foreign workers entering Singapore. So we do have a little bit of issues similar to Europe. But in reality, again, I think there is no choice but for us to integrate. And that takes every businessman to really talk to their policymakers to enable this to happen. Our experience in this field has been that we have been able to put Filipinos in Hong Kong, in Indonesia. We have been onshore. I have seen lawyers from the Philippines in Singapore and nurses. We have worked with Malaysians, and we hope that they would help us improve our highway infrastructure. I think the lower economies, or not really lower, but I guess historically behind that are coming up, Burma, Cambodia, and so forth, there is a way that we can actually all work together. And the commonality of it could be a part, the IT infrastructure. But obviously, coming from the Philippines, which is one of the highest cost of the internet, per household, per user versus, let's say, Singapore, there are going to be varying degrees of difficulty of implementing this. But I think the die has already been cast that both information technology integration and ASEAN Union are basically inimical to our survival and for our competitive, not only region-wide, but as we look to compete with the likes of powerhouses as India, to stand together in the face of an omnipresent China, or even to have the intellectually capital at this point and the ability to tap it, the United States. So as far as we're concerned in our industries, whether it's small or medium enterprises, as well as bigger, we have to consider our IT infrastructure. Again, you think that it may be limited to IT infrastructure, but I've told this even to our own ministers. If perhaps, I don't want to use the Philippines, coming from the Philippines, but if Burma or Thailand and Malaysia are building this one railway system connecting to China, historically, your departments of public works and highways do not talk to your IT cabinet ministers. They do not take into consideration because it was centers of power for each of these departments. When in reality, if you already plan that train, you should also be planning your backbone for your IT infrastructure along the way, because it's your last mile and your connectivity to encompass all your populations into the ICT realm, which will drive your economy. So there are enough papers, and again, if you Google it, that a heightened IT infrastructure in every country will increase your GDP anywhere from 1% to 3%. So I think this is the small area that I can contribute into it. But again, this is something that hopefully we will not turn back. And as an antidote, despite all those forms, because I have 40 seconds left, Form D, Form E, G Form 9, hopefully Alexa, Cortana, and Google will soon have those at your fingertips. So thank you very much for listening to me, and have a good day.
Mr. Ramon Garcia focused on two P's, people and policy. He noted that the people aspect of the industry is very much felt in ASEAN integration, because we have the trained workers and we also have trainable workers from elsewhere. This is very important because remember, someone said more than half of the region is really in a very young age. In fact, about 50% would be 30 years and below. That means the skilled workers who are trainable are around us rather than in the graying areas of the industrial West, which is why the dynamism of ASEAN in its young population will lead to the middle-income markets that many are looking for in business. However, the people issue must also be related to the entrepreneurs who are going to drive new industries in this digital economy. And it's important to stress that one of the policy divides is on infrastructure. If indeed there is a harmonization of ASEAN policies on how to address this infrastructure issue, maybe there will be cross-border investment in this aspect. And this problem of helping SMEs increase productivity through a last-mile connectivity simply connects to the government's role, perhaps in a PPP, public-private partnership manner, on the infrastructure that then leads to the other stages of the value chain until the customers are reached by these small and medium enterprises in the connectivity. This is a very good theme for us to continue, and Dr. Jessie Tang will now be in a position to describe how her own entrepreneurial activities would have boosted her effort to move away from medicine.
Thank you, Dr. Macranas, and good afternoon, friends. It's my pleasure to be invited to speak at this forum. I'm pleased to be here today to share my personal views in respect of my industry, which specifically is the Malaysian palm oil industry. My speech is more simple compared to the other esteemed speakers because I'm just going to highlight the issues in my industry. I believe that our collective vision for a single market in ASEAN region has many potential benefits, although we have a long journey before we get there. The AEC platform offers tremendous opportunities for business owners like me in the ASEAN region to network, connect, and grow. The promise of creating a single market within ASEAN that allows a free flow of production factors seems compelling, and I'm excited at this prospect. Before I go into the potential benefits of the AEC and what I believe will help to create this single market, I want to tell you a little bit about myself and my industry. As a brief introduction, I was a medical doctor before I founded East West One Group, which is a palm oil plantation group of companies operating in Malaysia and Indonesia. I'm also a council member representing the state of Sabah in the Malaysian Palm Oil Association. I'm sure palm oil is no stranger to all of you. We use it widely, and the demand for this crop grows in tandem with world population amongst food and energy. I remember in the early 2000s, the palm oil industry was booming in Malaysia and crude palm oil prices were stable and trending upwards. I knew at once that the opportunity had presented itself, and that realization spurred me into venturing into the palm oil industry. In the mid-2000s, I capitalized on my early exposure in my grandfather's rubber estate and hands-on understanding of the nature of the plantation industry. Hence, venturing into the palm oil industry came very naturally to me. Today, palm oil represents about 60% of the global edible oil exports. Indonesia is the largest palm oil exporter with about 53% of the market share. Malaysia comes in second with about 37% of the global market share. Collectively, Malaysia and Indonesia have a combined market share of 90% of total global palm oil export. From a medical perspective, there are a number of benefits that many people do not know about. For example, palm oil has many phytonutrients. Research has shown that it can help to raise energy levels. The vitamins can help to improve vision and boost the immune system, and it also contains antioxidants that fight free radicals and help to prevent premature aging. More research is being done to see its effect in protecting against heart disease. But many middle-income groups shun palm oil, and housewives still favor other kinds of oils, perhaps it's due to habit or a long period of promotion of these other oils. But this is changing in many countries. Some of our biggest buyers are China and India. With active promotion and awareness campaigns of palm oil, manufacturers and households in ASEAN will also stand to benefit. With that as an introduction, I would like to point out 5 potential benefits to creating a single market. Firstly, and most obviously, is import and export exchange. With over 625 million people in the ASEAN region, the need for agricultural products, in particularly palm oil, will continue to increase to meet the rising demand. In this respect, I'm certain AEC can encourage and facilitate trade and economic growth in our region. For instance, AEC can encourage and facilitate the import and export of commodities. Malaysian's palm oil can be easily exported to Philippines, and Philippines' coconut oil can be easily imported into Malaysia. A second benefit is trade liberalization. Trade liberalization of agricultural products and food items by either reducing import duties or waiver of levies will positively drive the sector forward. That said, trade liberalization needs to be supported by improved distribution capabilities. Efficient road transport system and ports are vital in order for this to become successful. With an integrated and free-flowing network to access the markets, increase in trade volume and economic growth within ASEAN will be possible. The third benefit is better access to a capable workforce. In my industry, we are constantly faced with a shortage of workers. The problem not only affects our productivity levels in the palm oil sector, but it also discourages new entrants into the industry due to higher cost of production. In becoming a single market, I believe we will have access to more labor. Further, improved mobility within the region will let us have better access to skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled workers. Fourthly, we can benefit by more from research exchange. I believe it is important for AEC to promote cooperation amongst government agencies, corporations, universities, and associations on research on various fruit crops to raise productivity. Perhaps there could be exchange of research findings on rice, coconut, or pineapple from the Philippines, and palm oil from Malaysia. We are, after all, in a race against time, and food production needs to keep up with the increase in population growth. The fifth and final benefit is training. Another area where I feel that AEC could help promote is on leadership and management training. In our region, esteemed leadership and management professionals, including lecturers from every ASEAN country, could be invited to give talks on leadership and management. Looking within ASEAN is encouraged as we have vast talents amongst us. There is no longer the need to look for the West for guidance, as we undoubtedly understand ourselves better. So what can we do to turn these 5 potential benefits into a reality? I believe that AEC could establish a committee comprising of participants from the private sector, government, and NGOs to meet more regularly on promoting trade and investment within the ASEAN region. And what's important here is all efforts in promoting trade and investment has to be clearly communicated to all its stakeholders in order for it to be effective. Visibility can make us succeed faster. The potential benefits are all there, but we need to be active in our efforts to make it a reality. There is still much work to be done, but that is why you and I are here today. We are seeing history being made. With that, I come to the end of my speech. It is my hope that AEC will find ways to work together so that all ASEAN SMEs can become global players. That is all. I thank you, Ashley, for inviting me, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jessie Tang. I think it is very important for us to note that her suggestion for government, private sector, NGO working together for promoting trade liberalization. We know that government and the business sector are already working together in an ABAC, but the addition of the NGO is very important because even in the palm oil industry, I think the worker training that you suggest might be beneficial to some other ASEAN country will have to be factored in. And in fact, the digital technology impact on small industries will come about as we discuss how NGOs view this government-private sector partnership in many industries. I'd like to stress the fact that of the 5 items you said about the benefits of a single market, the training for leadership and management is most important. It is sad to note that despite the fact that we are in the throes of the 21st century Asia-Pacific century, there are few leaders of industries who look forward enough to be able to say the ASEAN imprint is very much respected. In this regard, I'd like to cite one example, and that's Sharia banking. We know that during the financial crisis, one of the miracles of Sharia banking came to light, that some of the banks who practice shared risk principles were able to survive this. But in fact, the Philippines would learn a lot from Malaysia's experience, just as we could share with you our experience in MSMEs. Rather than palm oil for coconut oil, I think it's the financial sector sharing of practices in Sharia banking, risk-based principles, and our MSMEs. I think this training on leadership and management is needed because the world needs new versions of business models. And it is ASEAN, with its very young population, that can show the way not only in digital technology, but more business models. And so finally, we come to our last presenter, who I hope will be able to share with us more of these new business models, Mr. Lawrence Choi.
A very good afternoon, Tan Sri, Dato, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Before I proceed with the content of my presentation, I would like to talk briefly about the company that I represent, Aladdin Street. Yeah. Aladdin Street is the world's first premium quality product and Halalan Toyiban focused e-marketplace. Aladdin Street provides both local and global platforms for businesses and consumers of quality Halal Toyiban compliant products to connect and trade beyond ASEAN through its network of more than 40 offices worldwide in 2 phases, which will potentially cover a population footprint of approximately 5 billion potential consumer. Now, while many things have been said about the potential of ASEAN, but we must also emphasize and look at how we can then connect ASEAN to the rest of the world. Because as it is, America, Japan are still very important markets for ASEAN. Now, the benefit of ASEAN, the benefit of an enhanced intra-ASEAN connectivity will facilitate ASEAN development and strengthen its role in driving economic growth, attracting investments, and building better ties amongst its citizens through cultural exchanges, understanding, and more importantly, tolerance, right? Even in family, there will be little squabbles here and there, disagreements, So, but what is very important is that tolerance be observed. While opportunities for a connected ASEAN are abundant, there are immediate challenges and obstacles that needs to be overcome before true connectivity can be achieved. The disparity between economies are as wide as the ocean, and the gap needs to be narrowed. However, I am optimistic that these great economic divides among ASEAN brothers can be narrowed significantly through the adoption of e-commerce. Cloud technology have made the adoption much easier and a lot more affordable. Right? China is a living example of how e-commerce has brought tremendous wealth for its citizens, and its more than 700 billion digital economy have even leapfrogged the United States. Online marketplace must connect businesses, manufacturers, and producers beyond the boundaries of states and provinces into the global market. Right? As the Malaysian trade minister say, this year we must do something impactful. We must create wave. And as the former president of the Philippines, His Excellency Mr. Ramos also said that we should not leave our future into the hands of the superpower. We must take charge of our own future. We must create our own center for e-commerce. And then from there, we will then reach out to engage the global economy. All right? Okay. Only in the realm of digital economy that countries can achieve greater wealth in the shortest of time. ASEAN must not be content with its own market, but must look ahead to connect with the rest of the world. Aladdin Group have paved and eased the way and for SMEs listed on its e-commerce platform to access this global market, because we believe that SMEs are the backbone of every country's economy. SMEs are one of the largest employee of workforce, and with a good spread and a strengthened SME industry, the country will be able to withstand economic challenges brought about by the uncertainties today. Okay. So we not only provide this platform for these SMEs to access the global community. Now, what we have done is we have fostered a partnership, a global branding partnership with Manchester United Football Club, the largest, most popular and successful club, to allow our merchants and SMEs in countries that we work with to leverage on the massive popularity of that brand to enter and penetrate the market. Okay? On a last note, we hope that our humble contribution will help SME in ASEAN and around the world to connect and prosper. My presentation this morning is very short and brief, as I believe my colleague earlier have stressed and made many points about the benefits of a connected ASEAN. So I think it is my role today, this morning, is to share with everyone here how, as a private entity, will provide that single focus point for economies in ASEAN and around the world to leverage on and to export into the global market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence Choi. It is evident that from Lawrence's presentation, e-commerce as a solution to linking SMEs to the global market is foremost in his mind as his company has practiced it. It is important to note that what we require of SMEs would be a better appreciation of how digital technology can impact them, not only through e-commerce, but perhaps even in their workplaces. The platforms that we can provide for SMEs include not only for the e-commerce, but in fact for the training so that we get more world-class benchmark industries in the small and medium field. To wrap up the entire presentation, I think what we found was that Mr. Yulo started with opportunity, optimism, confusion, and fear. And what is the sentiment of the audience? Do we have more of opportunity and optimism or more of confusion and fear? Well, at lunch, maybe you'll be able to discuss that. But my sense of it is that the opportunities abound. And it is because digital technology will work wonders even for SMEs. More importantly, what I found out was that the business role in all of this makes us a driver of ASEAN. As President Ramos earlier has noted, ASEAN must take the lead in many of the issues facing the Asia-Pacific century. And the digital e-commerce is indeed one of those. Surprisingly, we note that this is not much known to the world, but many ASEAN citizens in Silicon Valley are making impact on the digital world. And this is very important to stress because with such identification, we're able to realize that the brains of the industry need not be located in ASEAN to benefit us. Because precisely the global context makes us aware that these people who are in touch with the most recent developments in the industries will bring home to ASEAN the benefits of their interaction with the world. This openness is what we need, and this is what ASEAN business really striving for, to be relevant as a leader in the 21st Asia-Pacific century in fields where it matters the most, including to this disadvantaged small and medium enterprises. We thank our participants for the lively exchange of ideas. We don't have the time for the dialogue that we promised, but I think the whole day will see a series of conversations around the table, in the corridor, and in the snack rooms for you to thrive on with more of these ideas. Good morning, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Macaranas. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to thank all our esteemed speakers for a very interesting discussion. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present mementos to all our distinguished role players. I'd like to invite Dr. Jean Wong, Senior Advisor of ASLI, to present the mementos. First, we'd like to present the memento to Mr. Jose Luis Yulo Jr., President of the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands and former Secretary General, ASEAN Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Tan Sri Lau Bantin, Director of BIG Industries Berhad, has already received his. Mr. Ramon Garcia, Chief Executive Officer and President of DFNN Incorporated Philippines. Dr. Jessie Tang, Founder and CEO of East West One Group. Mr. Lawrence Choi, Senior Vice President of Aladdin Group. And of course, our moderator, Professor Dr. Federico Macaranas. Thank you very much, our distinguished panel. A quick photo opportunity before we move on to our next program. While that's happening, ladies and gentlemen, we will now adjourn for lunch, which will be served at the Rigodon Ballroom, which is located just next door on my right. You can proceed there, turning right and right again towards that direction. We are honored to be receiving the luncheon address from His Excellency Gregory Su, Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development, Hong Kong, which will be represented by Mr. Philip Yong Wai Hong, Permanent Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development, Hong Kong. Kindly proceed to the Golden Ballroom to the right, and we will begin our luncheon session shortly. Thank you.